Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to our lecturer, Puan Suzy, and also to my classmate. My name is SITI ALYSSA binti SHADAN. My ID is 2024271322. We are from Group 2 and today our group will be presenting on a very influential figure in Malaysia's modern history, which is Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, and how his leadership has shaped the country's economic development. As Malaysia's longest-serving Prime Minister, Dr. Mahathir played a critical role in transforming the economy from one that was primarily agriculture-based to a more industrialized and expert-driven nation. His visionary policies, bold reforms and strong governance left a lasting impact on Malaysia's progress, both economically and politically. In this presentation, we will explore about his leadership style, key economic policy, major national projects and the legacy and contributions that he has left behind.
Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad was born July 10, 1925 in ALYSSA, Kedah as the youngest of 9 children in a modest household. His father, Muhammad Iskandar, was a strict but respected school principal of Indian descent, and his mother, Wan Tempawan Wan Hanafi, was a Malay woman from Kedah. After starting his studies at Seberang Perak Malay School, he went on to ALYSSA's Government English School, which is now Sultan Abdul Hamid College. He was an excellent student and developed a strong interest in reading, which later contributed to his critical thinking and leadership abilities. His early experience growing up during British colonial era and witnessed poverty and inequality in Malaysia also fueled his passion for national development and self-reliance. In 1964, he was elected Member of Parliament for Kota Star. Dr. Mahathir Mohamad was praised for his dedicated leadership, forward-thinking initiative and strong attitudes on economic development during his first tenure as Prime Minister 1981 to 2003.
Today I will explain about the post-economic independence landscape during 1957 to late 1960s. After Malaysia has gained independence in 1957, the country's economy was still shaped by the legacy of British colonial rule. During colonial times, the focus was mainly on exports, especially the rubber and tin. These commodities were profitable, but there was very little effort to build up local industry. As a result, Malaysia's economy became heavily dependent on primary goods and industrial development was very limited. There was also noticeable rural-urban divide. A large portion of the population, especially the Malays, live in rural areas and were involved in agriculture. In contrast, urban areas were more economically developed and often dominated by the non-Malay communities, especially the Chinese. This led to significant ethnic economic disparities. The Chinese controlled much of the urban economy and commercial sectors, while Malays were mostly engaged in small-scale farming or subsistence agriculture. This inequality created long-term tension and limited opportunities for many in the rural population. To begin addressing these challenges, the government introduced the first and second Malaysian plans between 1966 and 1970. These national development plans aimed to reduce poverty, especially in rural areas, through infrastructure projects, education improvement and basic healthcare. The goal was to improve equity and living standards across different communities. Next, I will explain about the economic challenges in the 1970s. As Malaysia entered 1970s, the country encountered new and more complex economic challenges. One major global event was the 1973 oil crisis. The sharp increase in oil prices caused inflation and significantly raised the cost of imported goods. This made daily living more expensive for Malaysians and also affected production costs in various sectors. Malaysia's balance of payments was impacted, meaning the country was spending more on imports than it earned from export, which slowed down overall economic growth. Meanwhile, poverty remained a persistent issue, especially in rural regions. Despite earlier development efforts, many Malaysians still lived in poverty, and the income gap between ethnic groups and geographical areas remained wide. There was also growing unemployment and underemployment, particularly among youth. As more young people completed their education and entered the job market, the economy couldn't keep up with job creation, leading to frustration and rising social tensions. This economic pressure contributed to a critical event in Malaysian history, which is the May 13 racial riots in 1969. This violent incident was a wake-up call that highlighted how deeply rooted the economic inequalities between ethnic groups were. It forced the government to rethink its economic policies and led to the introduction of new strategies focused on improving equity and national unity.
One of the most visionary and ambitious initiatives ever introduced by Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad was Vision 2020, launched in February 1991. It aimed to transform Malaysia into a fully developed, modern and industrialized nation by 2020. It included social, cultural and psychological dimensions, aiming for a united and balanced Malaysian society. According to Mahathir, there were 9 key challenges that the country needed to overcome in order to realize this vision. First, creating national unity by strengthening harmony among Malaysians of all races, religions and backgrounds. Second, building a confident and resilient society that is self-reliant, proud of its identity and respected internationally. Third, developing a mature and stable democracy that upholds democratic values and can serve as a model for other developing countries. Fourth, establishing a moral and ethical society that grounded in strong spiritual and religious values with people who uphold integrity and honesty. Fifth, encouraging a liberal and tolerant society where Malaysians are free to practice their customs and beliefs in peace and mutual respect. 6. Advancing a scientific and progressive society, not just one that uses technology, but one that also contributes to technological development through innovation and research. 7. Creating a caring society where the welfare of the community is valued above individual interests and where people look out for one another. 8. Ensuring economic justice by making sure that wealth is distributed fairly and that all communities have equal opportunities to succeed. And finally, achieving a prosperous society that is dynamic, competitive and provides a high standard of living for every Malaysian. Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad played a major role in transforming Malaysia's economy through industrialization and privatization, with the aim of driving rapid development and modernization. In the early 1980s, inspired by South Korea's growth, Mahathir launched a heavy industrialization project led by HICOM. One of the most iconic outcomes was the creation of Proton, Malaysia's first national car. The goal was to reduce reliance on imports and strengthen local industries. However, this approach faced challenges like high costs, limited local expertise, and weak industry linkages. After the 1986 to 1987 economic recession, Malaysia shifted to a more export-oriented strategy. The government encouraged SMEs to collaborate with multinational companies, helping the country become more competitive in global trade. To guide this shift, the first industrial master plan was introduced. It focused on liberalization, private investment, and supported the new economic policy by promoting equity and job creation for Malays. These reforms attracted strong foreign direct investment, especially in electronics, semiconductors, and textiles. Alongside industrialization, Malaysia also adopted privatization as a key economic strategy. The goals were to cut public spending, improve efficiency, and empower Malaysian entrepreneurs. The private sector was promoted as the new driver of growth, and Bumiputra participation was encouraged under the National Development Policy. While privatization stimulated growth, it also led to problems. Many businesses focused on short-term profits, and financial speculation began to overshadow productive sectors like manufacturing. Also, many state assets were handed to politically connected individuals, raising issues of corruption and cronyism. Critics pointed out that there were no clear national targets like boosting exports or innovation. As a result, privatization sometimes served business interests more than national development goals. In the end, Mahathir's approach brought economic progress but also created a political culture centered on growth over democratic reform and raised concerns about who truly benefited from these policies. Introduced in 1982 by Tun Dr. Mahathir, the Look East policy was a major turning point in Malaysia's development strategy. This policy was designed to encourage Malaysia to learn from the success stories of East Asian countries, particularly Japan and South Korea, in areas such as industrial growth, technology, and work culture. A key component of the policy involved educational and training programs. Thousands of Malaysian students and professionals were sent to Japan and South Korea to acquire technical skills, higher education, and professional training that could later be applied back home. Another important aspect was cultural exchange. The policy encouraged Malaysians to adopt and appreciate East Asian work ethics such as discipline, punctuality, productivity, and a strong sense of responsibility. In terms of economic collaboration, the policy helped deepen Malaysia's ties with both Japan and South Korea through increased trade, investment, and industrial cooperation. This included attracting FDI, particularly in manufacturing and technology sectors. Finally, the policy also paved the way for institutional partnerships. Malaysia worked closely with East Asian governments, universities, and industries to promote joint research innovation and policy development, especially in fields like engineering, technology, and infrastructure. During Mahathir's administration, Malaysia embarked on a series of visionary infrastructure projects that were central to his broader goal of modernizing the country and shifting it toward a knowledge-driven economy. One of the projects was the development of Putrajaya, a purpose-built administrative capital. It was designed to relieve congestion in Kuala Lumpur and to create a more efficient centre for government operations. But more than that, Putrajaya was a symbol of modern governance, featuring smart planning, digital systems, and futuristic architecture to reflect Malaysia's aspirations as a developed nation. Complementing this vision was the creation of Cyberjaya, located right next to Putrajaya. Cyberjaya was intended to be Malaysia's version of Silicon Valley, a high-tech city that would attract global tech companies and stimulate local innovation. It formed a core part of the Multimedia Super Corridor, which was launched to position Malaysia as a regional leader in the digital economy. Cyberjaya was not just about technology infrastructure. It was also about building a knowledge-based society with strong IT talent, research institutions, and business-friendly policies. To support both international and domestic connectivity, the government also invested in building the KLIA. It was envisioned as more than just a transportation hub. It was designed to turn Malaysia into a regional aviation center, boosting tourism, trade, and business travel. Together, these projects were meant to function as a connected ecosystem, with KLIA bringing in the work, Putrajaya managing national leadership, and Cyberjaya pushing innovation. At the heart of these efforts was the Multimedia Super Corridor (MSC). This initiative stretched from Kuala Lumpur to KLIA and aimed to replicate the success of Silicon Valley by creating a zone that supported information and communication technology growth. Through the MSC, Malaysia offered incentives to multinational corporations, encouraged the growth of startups, and developed advanced digital infrastructure to support industries like software development, animation, and data services. To fund these large-scale developments and reduce the financial burden on the government, privatization became a key strategy. Major sectors such as airlines, utilities, and telecommunications were privatized, not only to raise capital but also to increase operational efficiency. This approach allowed private companies to take the lead in developing and managing parts of the infrastructure while still supporting national goals. During the 1997 to 1998 Asian financial crisis, Malaysia under Tun Mahathir took a very different path compared to its regional neighbours, most notably by rejecting the IMF approach. Mahathir strongly criticised the IMF strategy, arguing that its focus on restoring investor confidence came at the expense of ordinary citizens. He believed that IMF imposed austerity made the downturn worse in countries like Thailand and Indonesia. Instead, in October 1998, Malaysia introduced a bold move. It imposed capital controls. These controls stopped speculative money from flowing out of the country and stabilized the ringgit by pegging it to the US dollar. The goal was to buy time for economic recovery without outside interference. Unlike countries that depended on quick IMF bailouts or large asset sales, Malaysia prioritized long-term FDI. The government focused on sustainable growth rather than pleasing short-term investors. Mahathir also made headlines with his public criticism of Western speculators, especially George Soros, whom he accused of profiting from currency attacks and causing instability in emerging markets. Despite international skepticism at first, Mahathir's policies proved effective. Malaysia avoided a deeper recession and its economy began to stabilize sooner than those who followed the IMF model. Most importantly, this approach allowed greater policy independence. Malaysia was able to carry out targeted structural reforms, particularly in the financial sector, without being bound by external conditions. In comparison to other countries, Malaysia's recovery was faster and less damaging in the long run. By maintaining control over its economic direction, it showed that alternative strategies could work in times of crisis.
Now, let's look at the major issues and real solutions during Dr. Mahathir Mohamad's leadership. Firstly, Mahathir was known for his authoritarian leadership style. He centralized power and controlled political institutions, which helped him implement policies effectively. However, this approach raised concern about democracy and human rights. The Internal Security Act, for example, allowed detention without trial and was used to silence critics, including political opponents and media. Second, we have the issue of economic disparities and allegations of cronyism. While Mahathir's privatization policies encouraged industrial growth, they also led to unequal wealth distribution. Some business elites with political connection benefit the most, especially under the Bumi-Putra policy, which was meant to support Malays, but was often criticized for favoritism. To address these issues, several resolutions are needed. Settling democratic institutions, protecting media freedom, and ensuring laws like the ISA are reformed or repealed are vital for transparent governance. On the economic side, Malaysia should enforce anti-corruption laws, regulate privatization fairly, and ensure that all ethnic groups have equal economic opportunities.
I will present the contributions of Dr. Mahathir Mohamad in driving Malaysia's economic growth and transformation during his leadership, especially in the 1990s. Under Dr. Mahathir's leadership, Malaysia experienced steady economic growth, especially throughout the 1990s. He introduced pro-business policies and focused on industrialization, exports, and foreign investment. This resulted in consistent increase in the gross domestic product (GDP) and made Malaysia one of the fastest growing economies in Asia at the time. During his administration, Malaysia saw a significant reduction in poverty rates. Rural development programs, improved infrastructure and access to education and healthcare have uplifted the life of many Malaysians. His policies aim to narrow the gap between urban and rural communities. Dr. Mahathir played a major role in diversifying Malaysia's economy. He reduced the country's dependence on agriculture and focused on developing other key sectors such as manufacturing, finance, and tourism. For the second contribution, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad has influenced modern Malaysian politics through his leadership style and involvement in political reform. Dr. Mahathir redefined what it meant to be a political leader in Malaysia. He served as Malaysia's longest-serving Prime Minister, first from 1981 to 2003 and again from 2018 to 2020. His leadership style was known for being strong, strategic, and bold, and he was often not afraid to make controversial decisions. He centralized power, strengthened the role of the Prime Minister, and reshaped how politics were conducted in the country. One of the most significant long-term effects of Dr. Mahathir's policy was the massive investment in public services, which has lasting positive outcomes for Malaysia's development. His administration prioritized education, healthcare, and human capital development. As a result, literacy rates improved steadily, and more Malaysians, especially in rural areas, gained access to formal education. In the healthcare sector, Mahathir's government expanded public healthcare infrastructure, build more hospitals and clinics, and ensure better access to basic medical services. This led to improvement in life expectancy, child health, and overall well-being of the population.
In conclusion, Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad's leadership brought significant change to Malaysia. His policies like Vision 2020 and the Look East policy helped modernize the nation and boost its global image. He prioritized infrastructure and industrial growth, which contributed to economic progress. However, his leadership style was often criticized for being too centralized and for favoring certain groups. Despite this criticism, his legacy remains strong in Malaysia's policy and economic history. His journey teaches us that while strong leadership can drive progress, it must also be balanced with fairness, inclusivity, and accountability. That's all from our group. Thank you.